YouTube Ozick going the Goat House is back, and J.J. Watt is a free agent and can sign anywhere immediately. So we're here to break down the potential landing spots. There's a lot of teams, so I'm going to break them down in tiers, why they could end up with them, and then I'll rank the top 5 teams leading up to number 1 where I think he'll land. This is really a toss-up, though. And the longer he waits to sign, the more that'll tell us. He can start eliminating teams. So we'll break all that down, what that means. We do this for pretty much any big name. We got you covered for free agency, the draft, a bunch of content on the channel, a lot more to come. We grade every single free agency signing once free agency kicks off. So really excited about that. Follow our Twitter for that constant talk when any news breaks. And then, please subscribe to the channel, full NFL coverage. Link in the description and comments for anything that you need. There's that Twitter, just constant everything. Sneak peeks, the video, everything. Just breaking news, breaking it down, my takeaways. I'll pin a link to this. This is a page that I made. I'm going to keep updating it. It's pretty informing stuff. Live cap space. That I keep updating, and projected cuts, who could be cut, who could be traded, and the number of cap they can save with that. So that's definitely a link to keep handy. It's free for everybody. And then you guys can vote. I'll pin a link for this, the Decided app. You vote for where you think he'll end up. You can click other and comment, and you get likes on your comment. And then with that, you can win Amazon gift cards. So the people that get the most likes, a bunch of people win Amazon gift cards every single week. They give out 10 of those. So check that out. Pretty cool. Let's talk about all these teams. I separate them into tiers. We'll break all this down here. So tier 1, teams that can make a move right now, and I think that'll be interested. They also have a need. I put the Browns and the Ravens up there. The more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm thinking the Ravens are probably a legit team. It went from kind of down here to up here for me. They run a 3-4 defense. I think J.J. Watt could fit at a 3-4 end. I know he can in their defense. Opposite of Calais Campbell. So maybe let Derek Wolfe walk in free agency. No big deal. Problem with the Ravens, they got a bunch of edge rushers, which are outside linebacker. People get confused. J.J. Watt, isn't. People talk about Yannick Ngakoue. Did they bring him back? J.J. Watt and Yannick Ngakoue they wouldn't play the same position in that defense. So it's not like you're replacing one with the other or anything like that. So J.J. Watt would play on the line opposite of Calais Campbell. And they definitely need some of those outside linebackers back. I think Judon's gone. Ngakoue, they would like to bring back, maybe the franchise tag. They like Bowser a lot. He's actually more key than, maybe his production will show. He's pretty key dropping in coverage from the edge there when they blitz. McPhee's also a free agent. They also have to deal with the Orlando Brown situation. Upgrade at center, maybe along the interior, receivers. But I think they would be interested, mainly because, again, I think he fits opposite of Calais Campbell, and they're a team that's just never afraid to get better. They're always looking to add the best possible players. They're not worried about developing a certain guy. That's what I respect about the Ravens. The Browns, the Browns are just looking to upgrade defense mainly. They have some cap space. They can make the move right now. They don't have any major money to spend on their own free agent re-signings. Plug and play guy in their 4-3 opposite of Myles Garrett, and that's pretty appealing to them. The Bills, back when I thought Watt can get traded, the Bills kind of rang a bell there. Their defensive line gets pressure. They're just not getting to the quarterback enough, though, and that could be what it takes to get to that next step. They'd have to clear a little bit of space. I think they can make that work. If they have plans to get J.J. Watt, can cut Mario Addison, maybe Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes got a ton of pressure last year, but he's got to turn those into sacks. Couple guys along the D-line they can cut. You could make that bold decision to cut John Brown and save a pretty good amount of money. So they have some tough decisions, but there's several different ways. They don't have to do all of them for them to clear space. Kind of a good thing. Titans the same thing. They don't have to clear much, a whole bunch, to get J.J. Watt. Might have to make some tough decisions. Malcolm Butler, they can cut him and save a ton of money. Cutting him alone might do the trick. Humphreys could be cut. Vaccaro could be cut. So some tough decisions, but they have ways to clear easy money. Another team I include in Tier 1 is the Steelers. His brothers are there, but I mainly think about T.J. Watt. They're rushing off the edge at the outside linebacker spot in their 3-4. That's kind of their problem because Watt's not an outside linebacker. J.J. Watt's not an outside linebacker like his brother. He's going to be in that scheme. He's going to be a defensive end, and they play the defensive end on one side is Stephon Tuitt. The D tackle on the other side is Cam Hayward. The nose tackle, they had Alu Alu last year. They can pretty much find anybody to plug and play at the nose tackle. They value the nose tackle, having a nose tackle on the field. So where does J.J. Watt come into play? Him and Tuitt, similar players. They would have to kind of adjust the scheme a little bit. People talking about they could play Watt, Hayward, and Tuitt at the same time. They could, but they're going to have to rotate more of a, on obvious running downs, they're going to have to rotate a nose tackle. So who's coming out? Who's getting that rep decrease? Somebody's not going to be happy with that. Might be Hayward, might be Tuitt, That wouldn't really be ideal. But I think they would adjust the scheme. They've shown interest already, so I think they're, open to that. Maybe a defensive end on one side, J.J. Watt, and then one outside linebacker being T.J. Watt, almost like a Leo defense. Typically, you want something more athletic than J.J. Watt in that spot, but they can make it work. Really good defense. They got to clear a lot of cap, though. Big Ben might need to take a pay cut for that to work. Restructure probably wouldn't clear a whole bunch, so we'll see. That's a possibility. We'll circle back to those teams. Tier 2, I moved the Colts from Tier 1 to Tier 2. Originally had them in Tier 1. A lot of cap space. They need a defensive end. They kind of needed one to pair with Justin Houston. On top of that, Justin Houston's a free agent, so they kind of needed that. And I think he would fit at DN in their 4-3. Then they have a bunch of cap. They have a bunch of cap space, so that's good. They do have some needs though, because they have some key free agents. They already need somebody at left tackle. They need at least another big time receiver. They need a quarterback. Again, they might need 2 pass rushers now because Houston's a free agent. They need corners. They're not going to value corners super high in that scheme unless they're think about adjusting it. So the more you think about it, even though they have a lot of cap space, the more you realize the Colts actually have a list of needs, and they're trying to sort out the quarterback position if they have to trade for that. So with all that going on, and they have the cap space, I bumped them down a little bit. I think they'll be more focused on trying to find that quarterback, but who knows? They're not going to get desperate for really anybody. So I think they'll show some interest, but it'll be for the right price. They're not going to, if they're going to have to be the team to have offer the most money for them to get them, I don't think they're going to be that. Seahawks originally had them at Tier 1, dropped them down to Tier 2. They have Carlos Dunlap. Now, if Carlos Dunlap, he looked pretty good for them too. If he gets cut, they save around $14 million, and then that kind of opens things up more for J.J. Watt. They don't really necessarily need to cut Carlos Dunlap to sign J.J. Watt. They can have both, which would be pretty deadly. I don't know if they really want both, kind of the same style defensive end. But on top of that, and then they're going to be out of cap if they keep both. And they really need to work on the offensive line, and there's some other spots that can get better as well. So it makes them limited, I suppose. I think they'll show some interest, but it would have to be cheap, and he wants to go to a contender, so it's a possibility. The Seahawks are probably the strongest Tier 2 team, them and the Colts. The Cardinals, he would play 3-4 end in their 3-4. They would keep Chandler Jones, obviously, at outside linebacker, and then whether it's Reddick or Kennard or Gardeck playing the other one, it looks like a pretty good defense. I think the other teams in Tier 1 be more appealing. Chargers would be interesting too, because would he play on the D-line opposite of Bosa, kind of the same style player? Is there room for 2 of those guys? There could be there, because they're switching to a 3-4, and Watt and Bosa neither are 3-4 outside linebackers. So they're going to they have money. They got to re-sign Hunter Henry. They're still going to have money. They do need to focus on the offensive line, and they need to get an outside linebacker pass rusher. So, they really shouldn't have room to put full focus on Watt here. So therefore, they might not offer the most amount of money. But again, they'll be interested. Raiders will show some interest, I think, for sure. They have to clear some cap space to do so. They have ways to do so. But will that defense be appealing enough for J.J. Watt? And they do have to take some steps to clear that space. Patriots, I guess, will that team be appealing to J.J. Watt? They got a lot of opt-outs coming back. They have a lot of cap space, so they can become a contender again. Question at quarterback, though. The Packers would be a great fit, 3-4 end. They got Kenny Clark at nose tackle. They got some good pass rushers, so that would be really good for them. But they got to clear a lot of cap space, and they might be able to do that restructuring some deals. But if they don't have too many cut options, and they do, but they're not going to clear a lot of space. They would have to trade Preston Smith probably, even though him and Watt aren't the same position in that scheme, but they'd have to trade him. Gary steps in, that clear space, trading him. And doing all that, a lot of steps they need to take, doing all that, and then they're pretty much got a little bit of space to sign J.J. Watt, but then you won't get Aaron Jones back, you won't get Jamal Williams back, you won't get Corey Linsley back, you won't get Robert Tonyan back, maybe one of those guys, the cheapest one. So a lot has to happen for the Packers. I've seen a lot of people say, I like the Steelers for J.J. Watt, but they're not going to make a work cap-wise, and then they go on to pick the Packers, but he's going to go to the Packers. I've seen credible thought credible people like experts say that, and that makes zero sense to me. You see some sleepers. If he wants to play for dirt cheap for the Buccaneers, they have cap space, but they got to spend on Godwin, who I think they get the franchise tag, Levante David, Shaq Barrett. Those three will pretty much take up their cap space. They also have a guy like Ndamukong Suh, a free agent. They could let him. They might have to let him walk. So those three guys will pretty much take up their cap space. And then so J.J. Watt's going to have to play for dirt cheap. They might not even be able to do it for them. So things need to happen there. The Dolphins is kind of maybe be a Shaq Lawson type upgrade possibility. Are they appealing enough? It's a really good defense, maybe. The Jets, could offer the most money here. I think you'll fit defensive end, in Robert Saleh's scheme. The Jets, at the end of the day, they're probably not appealing enough because they're still somewhere in that rebuild stage. But they might be a little more appealing for defenders than you think, out there. I think a lot of defenders might view that as an appealing spot. It could be a defense that can compete right away, but I still think there are far more appealing teams. That's probably why he won't go to the Jets. The Vikings, he would fit opposite of Danielle Hunter. They need another pass rusher. They're going to have to clear some space. They can clear that space, so they could show some interest then. They do have to figure out what they want to do with the offensive line. So I just think there might be more appealing teams, but it could be pretty appealing. And the deep sleepers are mainly teams that I'd say the Broncos have some sort of small shot, because they can sign J.J. Watt. He can, play a 3-4. They'll probably cut Jarrell Casey. He'd play a 3-4 Watt, that is. But that would mean they would have to, pass on their re-signing some of their own. They have Justin Simmons, A.J. Johnson. They got Von Miller's got a team option. Shelby Harris. They got some big key free agents. So, and from what I've heard, they want to keep that band together pretty much and then add like corners on top of it, and look for maybe the quarterback of the future, even though they do have some trust in Locke. So signing Watt could disrupt that unless he plays for dirt cheap for the Broncos. I don't know if that's a team he would play. They're a good team, but dirt cheap for. So it's a possibility, but if the Broncos sign Watt, I wouldn't really view it as a great thing, because they might not get some of the key players back. There's some teams where I really wouldn't view it as a great thing there, depending on the price. The Jags might switch to a 3-4, a little bit of a Ravens scheme going on for them, most likely, so they can use a 3-4 end. It's just they have so many draft picks, they might just go to young route. Makes more sense. Get a guy in his 30s that has injury concern. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. And the Cowboys have also seen somebody from NFL Network actually say, I really didn't want to put the Cowboys up here, but it's just an interesting talking point. They said the Cowboys have 18 whatever million in cap space, so they can make J.J. Watt work. They forgot that Dak Prescott's going to be a 37 million cap hit if they franchise tag him or not. So that counts towards the cap. Again, they can clear some then, but this is going to be very little. You got to get Dak back. That's the bottom line. So yeah, that's a lot we just went over. And I'm sure there's other deep sleepers, but let's be realistic here. He's probably going to go to, one of the tier 1, tier 2. Again, if he plays for dirt cheap, definitely the Buccaneers because he wants to win a Super Bowl. But yeah, 5 teams in tier 1. Let's rank those teams and break them down. Number 5, so the 5th most likely landing spot, to me is going to be the Steelers. It's interesting because they called him. We already know that. It's confirmed that they showed the interest, even though he's not ready to decide yet or anything. So that tells me they're kind of confident. They can make it work on the field, obviously, but with the cap space. So that tells me they're ready. They got some plan in their head. But he would also, even with that plan, he would also have to play for pretty damn cheap, which I wouldn't rule that out. And that's why they're in the top 5 here. I wouldn't really rule that out. But I think right now, things need to happen, and some other really good team really just can't come along and offer a good amount more, because that could be the difference. Even contenders. It depends on how much he wants to play with his brothers. But if we're sitting here, we're at the end of next week, and he still didn't sign. I think teams that need to clear cap go up on the list. Teams that couldn't make the move now, they go down, because it tells me he's waiting for those teams that make that move, and he's kind of got his mind up, and he's declining these teams that are, want to make the move now. So it easily can change. The longer this goes on, the more this shifts. So we got the Steelers at 5 because things need to happen, and it's going to have to be for cheap. That is possible. That's why they're in the top 5. Number 4 is going to be the Ravens. Very possible. They're never afraid to get better. Love them for that. They got Calais Campbell last year. They can plug him outside of Calais Campbell. I just look, and they got some cap space, but like I said, they got to focus on Ngakoue because, again, Ngakoue, Bowser, McPhee, they're going to let Judon go. They're probably going to get 2 out of 3 of those outside linebackers. Again, they're not the same position in that scheme as Watt. They need those outside linebackers, so they're going to spend some money there. They could have some money left over. That's why Watt is still possible. The right tackle, the whole Orlando Brown situation, so they need to focus on right tackle. They need to focus on upgrading center, maybe the interior in general, receiver. Some of these things could be focused on in the draft, but there's kind of a lot where their main focus, their more important focus needs to be. If they start cutting guys all of a sudden, which they don't have too many spots to do that, then it's feeling like maybe more likely they're going to land Watt possibly. Number 3, this is where it gets tough because this was kind of my gut feeling all along was the Bills. This was kind of my gut feeling for most of the time because I knew he would probably be playing elsewhere weeks and weeks ago. I had videos on he'll probably get traded. They surprised us with the release. But I knew he probably wouldn't be playing for the Texans, and I was really feeling the Bills, because once they upgraded at defensive end position, they're really in business because they got a bunch of guys that kind of get a lot of pressure, and they're not really hitting the quarterback in big moments, in big games. They got to hit the quarterback. They got to bring him down, and that can take them to the next level. They're appealing for J.J. Watt. So this is a strong candidate. The reason I moved down to 3, I think at this moment, it's more likely the other two teams can make it work right now. The Bills have to clear space, like I said, and they can't. There are easy ways to clear space, but you would have to cut not all these guys, but you look at John Brown, but you look at the defensive side. Jerry Hughes, who was pretty productive in terms of pressure last year. Mario Addison, maybe some guys in the interior, one of Vernon Butler, Quentin Jefferson. So they can make it work that way. There's 2 things wrong with that, though. They may just like Jerry Hughes for his big-time pressure. J.J. Watt's also a pressure guy. Didn't get a whole bunch of sacks, so they may view it, are we just staying in the same, Watt's probably better, but are we kind of just staying in the same area here, cutting this guy for this guy? And they also, and they want to become as explosive an offense as they can, so they might, try to match a Chiefs' speed, at receiver position or get that many talented players. If they move on John Brown, that makes that harder. Another thing, Darrell Williams was very key for them at right tackle. Feliciano is a free agent as well. Cody Ford can play guard. Center is actually somewhat of a question. Mitch Morse is solid. But they may need to focus. We need to make sure this offense line is set for Josh Allen. So their priorities might be set elsewhere. So they're creating all of this free cap space by cutting guys, kind of creating a little bit more spots to deal with, only to sign J.J. Watt and be back, where they need to clear space, but they have no more room to clear space, no more cuts to make. So they can almost find themselves at square one again once doing this, and that's why I moved them from 1 to 3. I still really like the fit. It's definitely possible, but there's some tricky things that I explained there. So 1 and 2, both these teams already shown interest. And this is tough. I really like the idea of J.J. Watt back with Vrabel, and maybe they can re-sign Clowney, and they can have Clowney and Watt going again, with Harold Landry on the outside as well. Pretty ideal. The Titans definitely need pass rush, but I'm gonna put them at 2. I'm actually going to put the Browns at 1, but this definitely can change, and I'll explain that in a second. With the Titans, they could clear some space. But they're not kind of backtracking like the Bills if they do that. They clear space. They need pass rush as it is. That's kind of their number 1 focus. So they add J.J. Watt, and they can focus on the other things like they wanted to in the draft. So this really doesn't set them back. I think it's a possibility. It's exactly what they're looking for. You can play defensive end in the 3-4. They have Jeffrey Simmons in the interior. They could or they don't have to get Clowney back as an edge rusher, outside linebacker in their scheme, and they have Harold Landry on the opposite side. So it'd be ideal for the Titans. They do have some guys they do want to re-sign, so money probably, Jonnu Smith, maybe franchise tag, Jayon Brown, maybe Corey Davis. So that could be a reason why maybe they're in the same boat as the Bills, Ravens. And the Browns is just reason they're 1 right now is just because it's so easy for them to make this happen. But then again, if we get to end of next week, maybe middle of next week, and he's still not signed with the Browns, their stock in this sweepstakes is plummeting. It's going down because they're number 1 right now, but it very easily can go down because they can make this happen right now. They can make the offer. They can make a better offer than these top 4 or 5 teams, whatever. Pretty appealing team. They're getting a lot better. They're a good team. You're playing opposite of Myles Garrett. they don't really have any other needs, but then focusing on the defense. So this is part of their plan already. They don't have to make cuts or do anything weird, tricky. That doesn't really set them back at all. So there's really no obstacles. All these teams that I think are legit landing spots, legit, and I think they're very, the ones I talked about, they have obstacles still, even though they're legit landing spots. The Browns don't have any obstacles in the way here. So it makes a lot of sense right now. Again, he fits opposite of Myles Garrett. They've shown interest. But if we're getting to the middle of next week or later next week and he still hasn't made up his mind, he's still waiting on things, it's telling me he's not going to the Browns. Because they already had the offer out there, I'm telling you, by that point, middle of next week. They maybe already right now, probably a good chance. And he's waiting for a certain team, to clear that space to make that move. That's what that tells me. So, again, Browns are one right now because there's no obstacles. It makes a lot of sense right now. But if we're in the middle of next week, they're not my number one anymore. They're gone. They're probably not even top 5 anymore because that's what it tells me. He's waiting for that certain team, but we will see. This is something I've kind of changed my mind on a little bit because I really liked the Bills for so long. So it'll probably end up being that because that was my original gut feeling to the Bills. But we'll see. And teams are making cuts already. We got you covered for all that, but teams are making cuts, and that's kind of making it more obvious what teams are trying to do. So more of that could come out, and it can tell us more here. So we'll see some appealing landing spots. A Tier 2 team definitely can make moves and make it happen. We will see. It sounds like he will take, how much less is the question. He won't. I don't think he'll take dirt cheap money to play for a contender, but he'll take a lot less to play for a serious contender. So, people think, okay, so that the people are scratching off this team, highlighting this team, but you don't know what J.J. Watt's thinking. Who's contender, who's not, how much money is okay for him to take. We really don't know. So people try to decide for him. It's pretty ridiculous. But that's going to do it. We got all kinds of videos like these, a lot more to come. Off-season content on the channel, whether it's free agency, the draft, and a lot more of that to come as well. Please subscribe, smash that like button, turn notifications on so you don't miss a thing. Follow that Twitter. It's an absolute must follow. Link in the description, comments for anything you need. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.